The Dudley collection has great examples of works by artists who were working in figuration and became abstract artists at the middle of the century. These mid-century modern painters, Charles Alston, Norman Lewis, and Hale Woodruff, knew the Dudleys, and they were able to collect great examples from the artists directly. We have our cover lot, the Norman Lewis painting, which is really the most significant Norman Lewis to come to auction. Swann Galleries was the first auction house ever to offer an oil painting by Norman Lewis, and now we have a very important piece which really incorporates many of the themes that Norman Lewis was working in. Norman Lewis was really a New York painter, and his themes reflect his life in Harlem. He worked often at night, and his paintings are dark. They have tall vertical shapes that reflect the tenements, the urban setting he was working in. There are groups of figures that represent crowds. Sometimes they're dark and forbidding, sometimes it's musical and it's about dance, but there's always movement, there's always this push and pull in his paintings, and this painting really has everything. Norman Lewis is very important because he is really the first abstract expressionist who was African American. African Americans, of course, were painting in New York in the 1950s, and Norman Lewis was really part of the abstract expressionist movement. He was friends of Ed Reinhardt and David Smith. He attended many of the early meetings of abstract expressionism. He had representation at the Willard Gallery, a very prestigious gallery in New York. But only recently has he been included in the history of abstract expressionism. And I'm thrilled to be able to have a major work of his and to feature it on the cover of our catalog. Another artist who was very much part of the New York painting scene at the time is Hale Woodruff. The Land of Many Moons is a horizontal painting which shows his mid-century form, an abstraction that really has a lot of the elements that he began using. It has geometric shapes. Sometimes they evoke symbols from Africa. Some of the earliest paintings he did in abstraction were in the early 1950s, and this painting is a wonderful example. This is one of the few paintings from the Dudley collection that has been exhibited outside this setting. This was included in a retrospective of the artist in 1979 at the Studio Museum in Harlem. The Dudley collection also has wonderful works on paper from the mid-century by Charles Alston and other works by Hale Woodruff and Norman Lewis on paper. On the flip side, there are other great African American artists who did not embrace abstraction. Two of those are Charles White and Hugh Lee Smith. We have excellent examples of their work in this sale. Lot 26 is a very important early drawing from Charles White from 1949, The Ghost of Frederick Douglass, or Frederick Douglass Lives Again as it's known. This is a great drawing by Charles White. This pen and ink piece shows the artist at his best. He's able to convey a grand scale, a complex composition of figures in a very compact, small drawing. It evokes the WPA work he did earlier, but now in the late 40s, he's really describing the African American experience, the persecution of blacks during the Jim Crow era. You can see in this drawing, in the cross-hatching and the careful rendering of each face, a great intensity and monumentality, which Charles White learned from doing murals during the WPA and from studying mural painters in Mexico. We've had other great works by Charles White, including some of the larger monumental drawings he did in the 1960s and 70s. But this is really the first early drawing that we've seen come to auction by Charles White, which has this complexity. It's not a study, it's a wonderful drawing that stands on its own. Lot 40 is Hugh Lee Smith's painting, The Juggler No. 1. This is oil on canvas from 1964. This brooding painting is an extraordinary example of the artist's metaphysical phase. In the 1960s, his paintings became darker, showed more existentialism, and this painting with a concrete pier and isolated figures against a dark sky really sums up that period. In last year's Golden State Mutual Life collection sale, we had the painting by Hugh Lee Smith that set a world record, Slum Song, which showed his earlier work from the 1940s. Now in the 1960s, the artist is in a more mature phase, and we're seeing a different dimension of his work. In addition, we have other great works by figurative artists, including Ernie Barnes, Elizabeth Catlett, and Samela Lewis. In this election year, we also have some great works with a political theme. There's work ranging from Jacob Lawrence's screen print, the 1920s, The Migrants Arrive and Cast Their Ballots, to the David Hammond's flag in the African nationalist colors, a smaller version of the flag that hangs outside the Studio Museum in Harlem. Another example is Lot 50, Barbara Jones Agu's Unite, a large color screen print from this artist who belonged to the Afro-Cobra collective, a group that produced art that a person on the street could understand with a political message, and these color screen prints are very scarce. There is another impression of this print at the Art Institute of Chicago. In addition, in the true spirit of a collective, this work is signed by all the members of Afro-Cobra. Then in the Dorsey collection in New York, where many artists were politically active in the 1960s and 70s, we have a wonderful work by Kay Brown. Lot 86, The Devil and His Game, is a great indictment of the political establishment and the martyrdom of African American leaders like Martin Luther King, pictured, and Malcolm X, with President Nixon as the devil. Kay Brown was an artist who was very politically active, a leading feminist who worked with other artists like Faith Ringgold. And we have here a fantastic example of her work, which had been exhibited also in the Studio Museum in Harlem. These are just some of the highlights from our October 7th auction. We really hope that you can come to Swann Galleries and see the exhibition and view the artworks in person. If not, please visit our website where you can see the entire catalog online.